Okay, I gave you guys some bad info on that last video, the one that we shot over at Lowe's, talking about using water supply line for fuel line. So thank you to the viewers who pointed this out. You guys are absolutely right. So let's correct some of those things right now. First thing is first. I incorrectly identified the material used inside these lines as Teflon or PTFE. What it actually is PVC. Now, PVC has about the same qualities as far as being resistant to fuel and ethanol as Teflon does. But as it turns out, the higher end stainless that's rated for aircraft, military use, that sort of stuff, that is Teflon. The stuff that you buy at the hardware store is PVC. So PVC is also sold as fuel line, that clear nylon reinforced fuel line that you buy, that's PVC. The tubing that they use for oil pressure gauges, that's PVC. So no, it's not Teflon, it's PVC. Now I did compare, I put a piece of known Teflon, and this one next to each other, and the PVC is slightly thicker, right, wall thickness, than the Teflon. So there's probably a strength difference, but either way, it far exceeds anything that you're going to see in a typical fuel system. Now, a couple of other things. People said that yes, they have AN fittings to work with this tubing. I didn't know that. I was going on the assumption, because of my own experiences, of attempting to use AN fittings that I had that had been originally used on rubber hose on this, and found that it leaked. I couldn't get it to seal correctly. So I just assumed that because every one of these lines I've ever seen was crimped, that this material has to be crimped. I was wrong. They do sell fittings for this. I only use this on low pressure lines, like for instance, a regular carburetor fuel line. And this particular one has been used over and over and over again. I can't tell you how many different times this thing has been stuck onto a carburetor or someplace in a fuel system, and it survives just fine. It's good stuff. So yes, they have fittings. Now also, I didn't mean to imply that these won't hold more pressure than can be found in a carbureted fuel system. It won't hold more pressure than the way I use them. I tape the end of it and I use a regular hose clamp on them. If you had the right fittings on this, yeah, this will hold 50, 100, probably 150 PSI, no problem. I have no idea what the outer limits of this are. But house water pressure is 40, 60 PSI. So then this is always done to the safe side of house water pressure. So obviously it'll hold more pressure than what I'm saying. But the way I use them and use these hose clamps on them, I wouldn't feel comfortable using them at any higher pressure. So that's all I meant to say about that. But yeah, I wanted to clear that up. It's PVC. It's not Teflon, or I should say the ones that you get at the hardware store are generally PVC and not Teflon. Now other people said there's nylon also, right? Nylon ones. Now I've never cut one of these lines apart, and I've been using these, I can't tell you how long I've been using this stuff. I've never cut one of these apart and found nylon or rubber in there. It's always a material like this. So, buy a cheap length of it, cut it, to make sure that it is, at least the PVC and not rubber or nylon, and then, go to town, because if it's clear like that, or semi-clear, that, plasticky sort of stuff, it's going to be good to use. I would not use rubber. All right, so that's the one thing. The second thing is, I had planned on taking Slaghammer to the track this Saturday. It's all back together again. I ran it around out front. Everything seems to be fine. But in the comments on the last video we did on that car, several people said, is it that big of a deal to pull the heads and take a look? So I had already put a camera down each spark plug hole and eyeballed it that way, and everything looks okay. But you can't see like tightened ring lands or anything like that with the camera. So my gut feeling resonates with the comments that the viewers made. What's the big deal? It's a few hours, pull it apart and see. So I ordered some gaskets for it. I've already got, just in case I have to, I've already got pistons and rings to swap out. But yeah, I'm not going to go this weekend. I'm going to tear it apart and just eyeball it, in the flesh rather than just through the camera, and make sure it's all good before we take it out again. Better safe than sorry. But I do think it's going to be fine. Now, here's the fun part. So, okay, I brought this over yesterday. hang on, I know the light's gonna get goofy now because it's going from inside to outside. Oof, okay, there we go. So I finally dug this thing out of my backyard. This car has been sitting in my backyard for 15 years. 15 years. I bought this at a swap meet. Somebody had already started to pull this apart, you know, as a parts car. And then I decided years ago, I says, you know what? And this is after I had gotten away, literally had completely gotten away from cars. I was only doing motorcycles at the time when I bought this car. I says, you know what? I'll stick a 440 in here and just go bracket racing, okay? Just a simple bracket car. So that was the intent. It sat in my backyard for, I don't know, and I just never got around to it. I always got caught up in different things. I said, you know, the body in this car is so clean. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep it and I'll do something with it. So a few years ago, right before I started this channel, I took note of what was happening with the whole no prep and the small tire scene. I was like, you know what? Like, there's so much neat stuff happening, like the grudge racing and whatnot. He says, I'm going to build an injected nitro motor in this thing, keep the stock firewall, I'll cage the car out, and do a small tire grudge car with an injected nitro motor. So I started gathering parts. I picked up a couple of blocks, a couple of sets of heads, valve train parts, all different Hemi stuff to put it together. So I was, okay, I'm going to build an injected nitro, you know, grudge car. And when I started this channel, that was the intent. That's what I had planned to do with it. But as time went on, I realized I'm over it. I'm over it. You know, what a lot of people don't understand about racing, it doesn't matter if it's drag racing or circle track or anything like that. Only about 5% actually happens in competition. Only about 5% of racing happens in competition. The other 95% is about preparation, it's about testing, it's about being on the road, it's about all of the logistics, it's about supplying cash flow, only about 5% of racing actually happens in competition. I'm over it. I'm over it. I spent my 30s and my early 40s, my mid 40s, where that was it, you know, and all of the behind the scenes stuff that you don't see, I just, you know, it was like one of those, like, grin and bear it, you know, enjoy it. And I actually did. I enjoyed flogging things and refining things and testing things. But you know, it starts to get old because it's all encompassing when you're involved in racing. You know, when there can be nothing else. You have to have this tunnel vision, especially if you're going to start burning like things like nitromethane, right? It's a tunnel vision. It has to be your entire life. I'm over it. I'm over it. I'm actually over all forms of racing. I like watching it. I like taking a car to a local track and do some test and tune stuff. That's all fine, right? But I'm over it. I'm over it. And I'm happy I'm over it. So, but let's bring, it's like a relief. You know what I'm saying? It's like a relief. That's not to say that I'm not going to go to the track and screw around with stuff, but no real race cars, no real racing. Yeah, let somebody else do that. I'll have fun watching them, or maybe helping them. I don't know. But so this car. So over the last year or so, I started really looking at it and saying, what can I do with this car? How can I make this car useful to the channel, right? And I said to myself, I need a mule. I need a mule. Because the cars that we have, the projects that we've done so far, they're set, right? So in other words, like, they're all assembled in a configuration that they're going to stay true to, because that's how you make the car work. You know, you pick a configuration, you know what it's going to be, and then you just keep refining it. You test it, you refine it, you test it, you refine it. But you can't really go like off the wall with it, because it upsets every other bit of the loop. So you've got, let's just say you've got a cam that works with the converter, that works with the gear, that works with the tire, that works with all of these things. They all work together. And then to just willy-nilly start swapping in different things to try it doesn't work. So I says, I need a mule car. I need a car that when I have an idea for something I can test, right, or make comparisons. I need something that A, is drivable, that it's not a crippled race car that has to go on the trailer. It's drivable, and I can run it around and use a draggy to get times and make those comparisons. And an example of that would be like, let's just say you have an engine, you establish a baseline tune-up with a 500 CFM carburetor, right? Simple stuff, right? You take a 500 CFM carburetor out of the box, you bolt it on. Okay, now take that off, bolt on a 600. Comparison. Take that off, bolt on a 700. Comparison. Take that off, bolt on an 800. Comparison. Take that off, bolt on a 900. Comparison. And actually chart it, right? You can't do that with a car that's already set with, okay, it's going to have this converter and this gear and this, but it doesn't work like that. You've completely upset the car. So that's why a Mule with a moderate gear, run around in such a way that it's not going to spin the tires. So in other words, like instead of taking times from the dig like you would on a drag strip, you do them from a roll. So you make your comparisons from a 20 or 30 mile an hour roll to take suspension, traction variables out of the equation. So you would make your tests from, let's say, 20 miles an hour to 80 miles an hour and make your comparisons like that. Same exact thing as if you're running it on a dyno. So basically that's what it is. We're looking at using this as a rolling dyno. This is also going to be the home for the Plan Z Slant 6 project. So I have a lot of ideas and I have a lot of things that I want to do with Plan Z. The problem with the car that we had was that I built it literally like a go-kart. Literally like a go-kart. The car was so flimsy. When I say flimsy, it was so excessively gutted that like the windshield was a structural member of the car. Like if you step on the brake hard, the windshield would actually move. You know, you can't take that and run it around on the streets, you know, or just drive it to the track and not think of anything of it. Or so that's why I passed it on to Shane. Shane is going to build a full race car out of that. You know, it's a good roller for him. And I'm going to continue the Slant 6 stuff on this Mule chassis. I've got there's a 361 sitting inside on an engine dolly that I've already run in, so that'll go in here. The motor and trans from Plan Z will go in here. So I had already started cutting out the inner fender wells on this because I was going to build a full roll cage. I was going to leave the front frame segments in place and then start building a full roll cage. So that's why I trimmed out the inners there. But that is a bonus here, because it gives us that much more accessibility for anything we want to try. Like for instance, you have a car with a Mopar, at least with intact inner fenders, doing quick, and a big block and headers, doing quick plug changes and readings and stuff is a pain, right? But it's much easier with a setup like this. So that's what we're doing with this car. We're going to set it up with a 323 gear. I have several different sets of back rims and tires that we could put on there for whatever we happen to be doing with it. It'll be wired and lit for, I mean, drivable. You'll be able to drive this car anywhere. If you wanted to do like a drag and drive event, this would be the car to use, because it's going to be set up to go down the road. So we've got the Slant 6, we've got the that 361. I'm gathering parts for a 440, and if you guys have any suggestions of other engine combinations that you think might be interesting to put through this, you know, throw it out there. You know, give me some ideas. Actually, tests that you may want to see done with this car, throw it out there. Also, Kiwi was here last night. You know, we do our Thursday night live show, and after the show I was showing Kiwi the car, and we were talking about some things that might be really fun to do with it, but I'm not going to get into that anymore here. I'll just leave that as a surprise if it comes to pass. But yeah, Kiwi was actually expressing some interest in things that we can do with this car that are definitely not what we typically do on this channel. And I got a big kick out of it. I think it could be a lot of fun. So, but that's beside the point. That's the next thing in and out of here. This goes in, and then the next thing that comes here is my 73 Roadrunner. Which is, I mean, the car's together, but it really needs love from one end to the other. So we're going to go through all of the brakes. I picked up a nice front seat for it. But just a lot of little odds and ends. It has some rust damage around the inside of the trunk lid, like, you know, at the top of the quarter panel where where the weather stripping would go. It's got some rust damage there. It's got some rust damage at the bottom of the quarters. So the 73 Roadrunner is the next thing to come here for that. And this is, over the next couple of months, this is what we're going to be working on, prepare it for our testing. So that is our Mule. And that was a correction on some of the erroneous information that I gave you guys on that last video. So that's it. I gotta get this thing off the trailer and in the shop, and I'll see you tomorrow.